Today we're going to be implementing and iterating on a database schema using Flyway. You'll want to download Flyway. It comes as a zip file, and you don't need to do anything further with that. Beyond that, we'll need a means by which to get a Postgres instance, so either install Postgres or use Docker Desktop. We'll walk through the Docker Desktop workflow on this exercise. And further, we'll use Visual Studio Code for our development environment. I've created a directory for today's exercise. It's named Flyway. And I'm going to take the downloaded Flyway zip file, and I'm going to open that up, take all the contents, just drop it into that playground directory. This isn't necessarily the perfect deployment strategy for this, but we're going to do this today just to simplify. Leveraging insights from the previous Postgres exercise, let's obtain an instance of Postgres. I've opened up a terminal instance to the directory of the day, and I've opened up Visual Studio Code to that directory. The first thing we'll want to do is we'll go to the SQL directory, we'll right-click, new file, and we'll name it init.sql. This file we're going to use to inform the Docker image, or the server, how to create the database that we care about. So it's going to be create database non-zero. End with a semicolon, really important, and I like new lines. So here we are. The next thing we'll do is we'll create a Docker file that explains how do we create that. So we'll do a new file, Docker file, and we'll populate this file next. We'll start with the image. That'll be the Postgres 11. Then we'll define some environment variables. Postgres user and Postgres password are built into the image. Those get mapped to the default admin user. So Docker and Docker, since we're not using it in production, we can use something that's trivial for a username and password. I like to say what we're exposing the port of, which 5432 is the default Postgres port. Might just serve as documentation for our purposes today. And then we're copying the init SQL file from our local drive into a special directory for this image, which is the Docker entry point initdb. And we're going to copy that init SQL file over to be an init SQL file over here. And that'll get run by default when the image gets run. Now we can come over to the terminal and we can build and run that Docker image. So that's docker build non-zero db in the current directory. I have the image already pulled, so that's a pretty quick process. It's just copying a single file. Then we're going to do a docker run, exposing the port 5432 of that image. I'm doing it in detached mode because I want to be able to leverage this terminal instance still. But if we do docker logs with that code, we can see that it in fact ran. And a point of debugging is, did it use this script? If it didn't, you'd be in trouble. You'd want to start back and see that we didn't make any typos over here, for instance. Now, suppose we want to iterate on our database. We want to add a table to it. Flyway offers a means by which you can set scripts and have them versioned so that you can go from 0 to the latest version, or from any version along the way to that latest version. We're going to go back to this SQL folder. We're going to add a new file, and using a v and then some numbering, in this case 1.0.0, and then 2 underscores, and we can just name it at that point. I'm saying table. We can then put in some script from our previous exercise, just the create table script from before, and then run Flyway against this to get our database up to the latest version. So back in the terminal instance, we can do a Flyway noting that it's in this directory, so it's not that we're leveraging the Windows path environment variable. We're using it right here. We can then run some commands against that. Migrate. We're going to specify the URL, and since Flyway supports multiple types of databases, we have to tell it how to connect to Postgres, which is a specific database that we care about today, and which database we care about. So we know it's hosted on localhost 5432, and it's the non-zero database. We're going to specify the locations where we're storing our SQL scripts, our version to migration scripts that we care about. So that's our v1 table script. We're going to say, hey, if it doesn't work at first, try again. And then we're going to specify, some more details about the instance, like the username being Docker, the password being Docker, very secure. And all said and done, it looks like it worked. We get this message saying that we successfully applied one migration, and we're now at the version 1.0.0. That's great. So next, let's go ahead and add another script over here and run Flyway again to iterate to the next version. Let's take the create table script here, and let's just create a new file. We'll call it v101 double underscore. We'll say another table .sql. Really important. 101 here. So it's a later version. We're going to paste our script from before in, but we're going to make it totally new and original. We're going to say it's another table. And there we have it. Very, very special and unique and interesting. We're going to have the best schema ever. We can go back to the terminal instance, and we can just hit the up arrow. We're going to run the same Flyway migrate command as before, and it should know we're at 100, and it should find 101 and say, hey, let's take us to 101. Let's see if it does that. And in fact, it only applied one migration, although it found two, and it took us up to 101. If we run that command again, shouldn't need to do anything. We're up to date. Suppose we need to spin up a new instance of the database, maybe for dev purposes, or we're going between different environments, like a dev test or a staging environment. You want to be able to test on another instance of the database that looks just like it's supposed to. You might end up with a new clean database, right? So let's go ahead and docker ps-a. We'll see our database. We can just go ahead and close that down. So now that database is gone. We don't have a database currently. If we go and start it again, we can just do that same Docker run as before. Then we can Flyway on that. You'll note it's starting up, so it might need to retry. Oh, it knew it. It's good. And you'll see successfully applied 2 migrations, and we're now at 101. So we just got ourselves a new database and migrated it up to the latest version. And we have the schema that we care about. And that's as simple as it needs to get. You can do things like undo scripts or repeatable scripts. There's more to what Flyway is capable of. Some of that requires premium access, meaning you'd have to pay for Flyway at that point. But up until this point, if you just wanted to leverage this style of versioning your scripts, maybe you'll do alterations of tables, maybe you'll remove some tables in these scripts. You can do that with Flyway for free. Today, we spun up a new Postgres server, and we iterated on its schema to bring it up to the latest version. We played with different version scripts, and we saw how it worked from one version to the other, or from clean to the latest version. If you have some additional time, you might check out the Flyweight documentation to see what additional details you can play with in that. But if not, congrats on a non-zero day.